I want to get into some of the conspiracies. This is kind of like the freaky portion of the podcast where people have really gone on and did something with what they believe could have happened. And maybe some of them are true. So I want to go through them and I want to hear what you guys think in the comments below. Because, you know, I love a good conspiracy theory, but I'm also like, I like to think I'm a rational thinker, so I'm pretty hard to please. Now, a lot of people talk about an intruder, which I think is probably the leading theory in this case, that there was an unknown intruder that gained entry into the house through the basement window. They went up and carried JonBenet down to the basement and killed her. Now, critics of the intruder theory point to the undisturbed cobwebs and dust around the basement window. The Ramseys lived in an affluent neighborhood, but they had a history of burglaries in the last months before her murder. Blood and a boot print were found at the crime scene that did not match anyone in the family. Now let's get into these monsters who like to claim that they're the person responsible for her death. Like this guy, Gary Olivia. He's already in jail serving a 10-year sentence for possession of inappropriate material involving children. He was caught confessing to this murder through letters he had written to a former classmate. He wrote, "I never loved anyone like I did JonBenet, and I let her slip and her head bashed in half, and I watched her die. It was an accident. Please believe me. She was not like the other kids." He writes, "JonBenet completely changed me and removed all evil from me. Just one look at her beautiful face, her glowing, beautiful skin, her divine God body." Jesus, this guy's nasty. "I realized I was wrong to kill other kids, yet by accident she died and it was my fault." Now, Gary is writing these letters to his buddy Michael, and Michael isn't too fond of it. Actually, Michael has had a feeling that Gary's been responsible for her death for a long time. This report writes that Michael suspected his old high school buddy of killing JonBenet for the last 22 years, ever since he received a disturbing phone call from Gary shortly after the murder and before the case made national headlines, which would be really interesting. I mean, how would this guy Gary know about this case before the world did? Michael shares, "My suspicions began when Gary called me late at night on December 26, 1996. He was sobbing and he said, 'I heard a little girl.' I tried to get more information out of him," Michael says. "The only other thing he told me was that he was in Boulder, Colorado. Now on December 27th, I read the front page of my local newspaper. Girl 6 slain in Boulder, Colorado. I immediately called the Boulder Police Department and told them what I knew about Gary and what he had told me just days earlier. But they didn't get back to me. 3 months later, I called the police again to find out what was going on in its investigation of Gary. But instead, I was sent to a police answering machine set up for tips on the JonBenet case. I left a message on the recorded line, and again, I never heard back from investigators." Which is so frustrating because I feel like a lot of times there could be justice in certain cases if the police actually use the resources they're putting out there. I mean, don't create a tip line if you're not going to go and listen to the tips.
The man who received those letters from Gary Olivia, his former classmate, Michael Vale, was he always a little different?
We knew there was something wrong with Gary. In fact, we called him Scary Gary. He was known for breaking into places and getting art supplies. I mean, he could break in and steal things. You remember a phone call you get that's terrifying. You remember it. You remember the room you're in when you get that phone call. It was December 26th, and it was about midnight. And I get that phone call, and it's Gary's voice, and he's like, "Oh, I just heard, little girl, Like, it was the most terrifying. I'm getting goosebumps just now telling you guys this because it was terrifying. I immediately jumped into protective mode. "Oh, where are you? What's your address? What's your phone number?" And he kind of caught on to me, but he told me he was in Boulder. When I was like, "Boulder? Why would you be in Boulder? You've been sending me mail for 16 years from Oregon." He hung the phone up when I'm trying to get information.
This guy gives me the major creeps. I mean, jump scare, just look at him. Back in 1996, Gary was registered as an SO, a sex offender, whose listed address was not far from the Ramsey home. And he reportedly attended a candlelight vigil shortly after her murder, which I've heard that before too, that the killer will actually go and like participate in like the investigation or the search or the candlelight vigil. They didn't consider him a suspect until the year 2000 when he was arrested on an unrelated charge, and police found a photo of JonBenet, a poem he had written titled Ode to JonBenet, oh, fuck me, he's so creepy, and a stun gun among other possessions. There's actually theories that this stun gun may have been used to subdue JonBenet on the night of the murder. Which when I hear stun gun, I think of like a taser. Like, a loud taser that electrifies you. So I feel like it's not very quiet if you're trying to subdue her. Eventually, investigators lost interest in Gary when new DNA testing methods failed to match his DNA to the crime scene evidence. But we have to remember that the police did not preserve this crime scene properly. So I still think that Gary could be a suspect. Many others also agree that Gary could be a suspect. I mean, they believe that the police had put too much emphasis on DNA matches, especially for the time period. It is interesting that they are running this DNA and they're just like checking out. I mean, it doesn't seem like they're doing their due diligence, especially if DNA is not like advanced enough to use it. Then why are we using it to determine whether someone's like probable or not, whether they could be the killer or not? It just kind of seems like it doesn't make sense. Like, okay, so it's not advanced enough to actually use, but then when we do use it and it fails us, we just kind of write it off. Well, how do you know that it's advanced enough to even tell you that you're wrong? Michael claims that he's still fighting the good fight and he wants to see Gary charged. He has actually sent these letters to the police department in hopes that this could be a written confession, which I think that's such a smart tactic. I mean, he wrote these letters to you about this case, confessing to it. I mean, it sounds like a written confession if you add it up. Gary has been behind bars in Colorado since 2016 when he was arrested for having inappropriate content of children. This guy's like the worst type of person that could exist on the face of the earth. Gary wrote a letter to Michael saying, "I pleaded guilty to the murder of JonBenet as well as countless charges of assaults and harm against many children. There were various agreements made by me and the court which I signed many pages." Now, this is an absolute lie. He never actually came to such plea agreement. But there does seem to be a long obsession that Gary has with JonBenet Ramsey, and that to me is like enough of a red flag to continue to consider him. I mean, I think it's different if there's like a creepy guy that is obsessed with her who kind of got introduced to the case through the media, but the fact that this guy was aware of her death before everyone else was, I think that's right there. Like, I mean, can someone explain that? How would he even know to go and tell Michael that he had done something wrong to a girl in Boulder, Colorado?
A convicted has written incriminating letters. His name is Gary Oliva.
He likes pictures of little kids, child. We know that for a fact, okay? So that gets him into the, into the sphere of people who could potentially be responsible for all this. Now, he's written a series of letters, including ones where he has admitted taking the life of JonBenet Ramsey. That's one of many letters that Gary Oliva has written through the years, this to Michael Vale.
Now, the police have put out a statement when it comes to Gary. Quote, "The Boulder Police Department is aware of Gary Oliva and has investigated his potential involvement in this case, including several previous confessions. The department routinely receives information on this investigation. Information provided to the police department is reviewed along with many tips and theories we receive. There are no new updates in this investigation and the department will not comment further." In my opinion, it looks like the pressure the press had put on the department kind of led to them answering. So maybe they are taking this situation more seriously, but I also think they could have done some investigating, could have already determined that he's lying, he's mentally ill, he's just, out there. I mean, God, he's into children. So, I mean, look at him. Jeez. So maybe they have information that shows that Gary Oliva isn't responsible, which I kind of doubt, but I can see them withholding this just in case he is responsible. They don't want to put out a statement clearing him and then embarrassingly having to acknowledge that they were wrong. Now let's get into those conspiracies that live on the internet and that will probably end up dying on the internet as well. Like that some people think that Katy Perry is JonBenet Ramsey. I mean, the fact that her body was found, I just don't quite understand how this could be true. They write, JonBenet Ramsey was not killed that night. She was kidnapped. Her parents staged her death and she later resurfaced as Katy Perry in 2008 with the song I Kissed a Girl. Really? Isn't Katy Perry also older than 1990s? Oh no, I guess she would be 6 years old in 1986. Okay, so then she would have been born in 1990. But I thought Katy Perry, I guess she is 34. Huh. Their evidence includes the fact that I guess they look alike. Katy Perry and JonBenet have a resemblance. One YouTuber went to great lengths to prove the similarities in their eyebrows, which mean they must be the same person. I mean, really, there's a lot of people who look alike. But a different YouTuber points out one of the lines in Katy Perry's memoir. She wrote in reference to writing songs at an early age, saying, Not that I was one of those stage kids. There was no JonBenet Ramsey inside of me waiting to burst out. Now, if she was really JonBenet, then why would she make this reference? Well, according to the YouTuber, the Illuminati always puts its clues out in plain sight. So I guess she's trying to allude and like to hint that she could actually be this young girl. So it seems like this conspiracy started from a YouTube channel. So that's where they birthed this idea that Katy Perry is JonBenet Ramsey. But the story eventually gained enough traction for entertainment news sites to start covering it in February 2016, and Katy Perry even referenced it at the VMAs that year.
Blink twice if you're really JonBenet Ramsey.
Wait, no, that's not real.
I knew it. I'm taking it to TMZ.
You need the money or something? I mean, come on.
The theory is that JonBenet Ramsey's family actually faked her death to get her out of Patrick's because she was being stalked by Schmiles. Then she was groomed to become Katy Perry. Okay, here are their faces meshed together. I mean, it looks exactly alike. I'm not gonna lie, it looks exactly alike. Here's JonBenet's parents and Katy Perry's parents. They look alike. I mean, mama look a little skinny and daddy ain't got no hair, but they look like they could be the same person. They do look like they could be the same person. Then somebody else said, check the eyebrows. The eyebrows do look similar. What the big butt is, did they find the body? And she had an autopsy and all that. The real conspiracy is how Katy Perry been famous this long.
That's what I'm saying. Like, we have a body and Katy Perry has a past. Now, I'm not saying she's not part of the Illuminati. Let's just not even go there. That's a whole other video. But Katy Perry had a Christian pop album. Her name's Katie Hudson. She released her music in 2001 when she was 17. JonBenet would have been 11 years old. Please. It's also not like Katy Perry just appeared out of nowhere. Again, she was a Christian pop singer until she became whatever you want to call her now, a pop singer. She's a pop singer. But there's darker conspiracies out there, one that involves Epstein. Now, a woman who closely resembles Epstein's sidekick, Ghislaine Maxwell, was seen in the background of what was supposedly the last photo of JonBenet Ramsey alive. The theory received a great deal of traction on TikTok, where the image supposedly showing Ghislaine Maxwell in the background was sometimes shared with the hashtag peace. We have to be careful with some of the things we say here on YouTube, but here's the image that went viral. Now, this photo is not the last known image of JonBenet Ramsey. It is in fact a genuine photo of her, but the theory was given credence when the internet detectives sleuthed that Ghislaine Maxwell and the Ramsey family were both repped by the same law firm, a Denver-based firm, Haddon, Morgan, and Foreman. And for whatever reason, it looks like this law firm likes to represent sketchy people. I'm talking Harvey Weinstein, Charlie Sheen, so I don't know why the Ramsey family needs this kind of representation.
I'm like 99% sure it's her. So back when the case was happening, the family hired a law firm to protect themselves. This is the law firm they hired. And guess which law firm Ghislaine Maxwell is currently using? This law firm. And I get it could be a coincidence, but still, it's kind of weird. And then as soon as his wife passed away in 2006, John Ramsey began dating, drumroll, Beth Holloway. Her daughter Natalie Holloway, she disappeared many years ago, and she's believed to be trafficked by many people. And guess which law firm Beth Holloway was using?
Now, this conspiracy has gone mainstream because an A&E documentary called Hunting JonBenet's Killer actually brought up this theory with Ghislaine Maxwell, but there's, again, zero evidence. So I feel like it kind of like sensationalizes this like case opposed to like honing in on the facts. Like, let's talk about Gary. Let's not talk about the Epstein. Though I do think it's weird that they have the same law firm. Like, let's note it, but I don't think it's something we could lead with, especially when we do have the body. Thank you for watching this clip from the Let's Get Into It podcast. To view the full episode, visit the link listed below.